updates from the Office of Teaching and Learning, the Division of Educator Talent and Workforce Development. Thanks so much for joining us this morning as we begin to roll out the new evaluation system for educators, leaders, and counselors across the state of Louisiana. Indeed, it is a great day to be a Louisiana educator. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the new Louisiana evaluation system. This improved system is named LEADS, Louisiana Educator Advancement and Development System. The name is consistent with the vision for the evaluation system, which is focused on growth and development of our educators so that we can ultimately grow and increase student achievement across the great state of Louisiana. This morning, I would like to introduce two of the individuals who, along with me, will be presenting information from the Department of Ed. First, I'd like to introduce you to Laurie Pennison. Laurie is an evaluation specialist here in the Louisiana Department of Education and has been instrumental in the development and work throughout the pilot. In addition, I'd like to introduce you to Rebecca Stevenson. Rebecca serves as Director of Education Preparation and Accountability and has been working alongside Laurie as we begin to roll out our new evaluation system across the state. The evaluation evolution actually began with the request from the Teacher Recruitment, Recovery, and Retention Task Force. Research was conducted and the field was surveyed. Over 8,000 educators across the state of Louisiana responded to the survey, and data from the survey was used along with research to adjust the evaluation system. The new components and processes were then piloted during the 23-24 school year. The pilot informed decisions that you will see today, including policy that was approved by our BESI board in March. In response to research and feedback, and following an RFP process, the department contracted with the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching to assist with strengthening the Louisiana evaluation system, along with developing resources to support professional learning. At this time, I would like to introduce you to the Executive Director of Services with NIET, Ms. Nicole Boland. Nicole served as the project lead for our LDOE partnership. Nicole, would you like to say a warm welcome to our participants?
Thank you, Dr. Jeffrion. Good morning, everyone. This is an exciting time, and NIET is honored to be a part of this partnership and this project, and we look forward to this new system rolling out, LEADS, and I'm honored to be here today with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. This transition to an improved system will span over the course of 3 years, with the pilot currently wrapping up, the evaluation learning year in the 2024-2025 school year, followed by full implementation in the 25-26 school year. At this time, we're happy to report that nearly 60 systems, as well as 33 charter organizations across the state of Louisiana, have chosen option 1, which is full implementation of the Louisiana Educator Rubric, the Louisiana Leader Rubric, and the Louisiana Counselor Rubric. And we're happy that at the end of the call, we will provide you the links to the Louisiana Educator Rubric as well as the Louisiana Leader Rubric. The new system is based on evidence practices that enhance teaching and leadership practices. The system is fair and transparent and includes multiple measures, supports self-reflection, and gives teacher a voice in their evaluation. It leads to better feedback for improvement and resources to support individualized growth, and it makes stronger connections between individualized feedback and opportunities for professional learning. The rubrics that will be used in the evaluation were developed in collaboration with our partners at NIET and are based on NIET teaching and learning standards, rubric and principal standards rubric. The domains remain the same. There are minor changes to the names of some of the indicators, and the descriptors have been enhanced to provide clarity and make connections to Louisiana initiatives. Over the past decades, the Louisiana Department of Education has implemented initiatives designed to support curriculum, continuous improvement, and teaching and learning across the state. Louisiana has prioritized the adoption and implementation and now moving to the internalization of high-quality instructional materials. To provide access to these materials across the state, the LDOE has also supported districts and schools with implementing 3 proven strategies that enable sustained high-quality teaching and learning across the state: instructional leadership teams, teacher collaboration and support, and career pipeline support. The Louisiana Professional Learning Roadmap was designed to assist school systems and schools in aligning their priorities to improve instructional practices through these 3 essential professional learning structures. The roadmap describes the processes for these key structures. Summit Extensions have provided a model of the instructional leadership team process at the system level, which will be crucial in supporting change and developing leaders and teachers. In response to what our Louisiana educators have stated, Louisiana's improved educator evaluation system will build upon and support education initiatives. The process and instructional practices evaluation supports will be implemented through the structures of instructional leadership teams and teacher collaboration, and will support the implementation of high-quality instructional materials that have been adopted across the state of Louisiana. The Louisiana Educator Advancement and Development System will provide teachers and leaders alike with a research-based vision for instructional and leadership excellence. It will promote student outcomes-focused assessment of instruction and provide a structure of professional learning opportunities connected to evaluation. LEADS is designed to provide clear standards and quality feedback, support continuous improvement, provide differentiated follow-up, and enable reflection. The LEADS components and processes are aligned and cohesive to support continuous improvement. Think for a minute, what is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset? As we go through the components and processes for the Louisiana Educator Advancement and Development System, look for key features that promote and support a growth mindset. Research from Pete Hall and Alyssa Simmerl conclude that the more reflective we are, the more effective we are. With a growth mindset, we must engage in these characteristics. we have to all be more reflective. This improved evaluation system supports educators through the evaluation process to ensure reflection and growth. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Laurie Pennison, who will share some overview and changes that were made by our BESI board at the March BESI meeting. Laurie?
Hi, everybody. As Dr. Joffrion said, BESI did approve revisions to Bulletin 130 in March, and these revisions will come off of intent of notice this summer, meaning that you'll find the full updates in the bulletin when it comes off of notice of intent. However, we do have linked in here the revisions that were approved by BESI. In Bulletin 130, it outlines elements that must be included in local policy. The first of which is the job description. This is an important feature as it is used to drive the evaluation type. You have either your leads evaluation or a local evaluation. Typically, school level employees are going to be evaluated via leads with the educator or the leader rubric. There may be some rare circumstances that a job description might qualify for a local eval, and in these instances, operational role might be applicable. But approval must be granted from certification for educators to receive this local eval based upon the job description. If an evaluation is not entered into the data system and a local evaluation was not approved, certification, renewal, and advancement could be delayed. And in other instances denied. So this job description will help to drive which evaluation is used to ensure that that data is complete. The professional growth planning process is also a major part of the evaluation process and is now going to be embedded in the evaluation process through a coaching plan that is developed from the refinement area determined during observation, which is the next element that must be included in a local plan, processes for observation, data collection, and conferencing. Professional learning and support should also be included in a local plan, as well as a PGP coaching plan, student learning targets, and a grievance process. It is important to include this grievance process in a local plan as grievances are determined locally and used to handle, this process is used to handle any conflict. Bulletin 130 also offers a more comprehensive training for evaluators. All first-time evaluators must now attend a face-to-face training prior to evaluating. And those transitioning to any part of leads in the 24-25 school year will attend the training this summer. Plans are in place to offer this training annually for any new evaluators. The training for evaluators to conduct the leader evaluation is a 2 full days in person, followed by an online assessment for certification. And the training for evaluators to conduct the Louisiana educator evaluation consists of 3 full days in person, followed by an online assessment. In addition to this face-to-face training, that online assessment will be conducted every year prior to evaluating. Now, as a note, many systems have already been certified on the NIT Teaching and Learning Standards rubric, and those individuals may qualify for a 1-day training. They would then have to pass their assessment test just as all other evaluators. Now, we know that follow-up will be necessary to deepen the understanding around the standards of effectiveness for educators and leaders. And to assist with this calibration, we will have monthly calls, we will have information on rater reliability practices that will be outlined on how to norm on the rubric, and then a plan for on-site support is also in the works. To ensure that evaluators are attuned to the student-centered focus of the rubric and to maintain reliable scoring, the LDOE will analyze the relationship between student results and educator observation scores. And additional inter-rater reliability activities and action plans might be needed based on these findings. The department must play a crucial role in ensuring that educator evaluation systems are implemented fairly and effectively. And this includes monitoring and auditing. And here's why. First of all, it's because accuracy matters. A new evaluation system, like a new assessment rubric, takes time for teachers and observers to fully understand and apply consistently. And monitoring will help to identify those inconsistencies and ensure that we can get accurate scores that reflect our true teaching practices. We also want to ensure fairness for all. So consistent monitoring helps prevent the bias and ensures a fair and accurate assessment of performance. We also want to connect instruction to outcomes. Ultimately, the goal of educator evaluation is to improve instructional practices in order to improve our student learning. And so by analyzing this correlation between observation scores and student results, we can identify those areas where the evaluation system is working and where adjustments might need to be made. And then we also want to ensure that we support educator growth. And so accurate evaluations are needed in order to give valuable feedback to our educators and empower them to improve their instructional practices. Now, we understand that learning a new rubric is going to take time, and our role in monitoring is to support in this process, ensuring fair and accurate evaluations that lead to improved instruction and better outcomes for students. Now, as you know, our legacy system, Compass, was based on a 4-point scale. Effectiveness is transitioning now to a 5-point scale, with 3 being really proficient and rock solid. NIT research on correlations between the educator rubric and student achievement is consistent with research in that an educator who's consistently performing at that proficient or 3 level is impacting student growth 1 year's growth. And because this system is designed to grow instructional and leadership skills, it is going to call attention to that exemplary performance. However, we know that most will live in that 3 proficient range and sometimes visit the 4 and 5 area. This 5-point scale gives more room for growth, and we want to strive to be the best that we can. And those that are reaching the 4s and 5s, they are moving students above a year's growth. They're moving them 1.5 and more. Now, this is a concept that we are going to have to continue to stress and discuss, because some educators may be accustomed to receiving higher scores and they may not receive those same scores now, but we do want to stress that the 3 is proficient, rock solid, and that is a classroom that I'd want my students to be in. LEADS will have some familiar components and it will have some additions. All evaluations will consist of a qualitative score worth 50% of the overall score and a quantitative score or student growth score worth 50% of the overall score. For educators, observations will continue to be included in the process, and the Louisiana Educator rubric will be used. In addition, educators will engage in reflection by completing a self-assessment. Principals, counselors, and non-principal leaders, such as assistant principals or deans, will engage in conferences in place of these observations. Their artifacts and data will be collected throughout the year and used to score the Louisiana Leader rubric or the Louisiana Counselor rubric, and these will be reviewed during the conference. They will also self-assess. Principals will have one additional component, the principal survey, and this is aligned to the rubric and is given out to teachers to complete. The quantitative scoring remains unchanged. Typically, only educators receive VAM scores. There are some instances where an individual might have dual roles, where they may be an administrator, but they still teach a class, so they may have a VAM course. In this case, VAM would be part of their quantitative score. I just want you to take some time, as we've just given a lot of information. Think about what stands out most to you about LEADS as an improved evaluation system focused on growth and development of educators to grow students. All right, we'll go ahead and look deeply now at the Louisiana Educator Evaluation System. The Louisiana Educator Evaluation System includes the use of the Louisiana Educator rubric that, again, we will be sharing with you later in the call. And it has enhanced training, as we mentioned, and a certification process for evaluators. Educators are provided the opportunity to reflect with a self-assessment, and they also receive follow-up coaching and support, which is aligned to the refinement area and enhances that professional growth. Now, as a note, early childhood will continue to use class for their observation as required by Bulletin 140 for accountability. It would be cumbersome to conduct 2 different observation rubrics, but all other parts of the evaluation process do still apply to early childhood. Here you can see an outline of the weights of the different components. The shades of blue represent the qualitative assessment score, and the green represents the student growth or the quantitative score. Each are worth 50% overall. And you can see here that observations are averaged and account for 45% total, and self-assessments account for the other 5% of that 50%. And then our SLTs are worth 35%, 15%, and VAM 35. Now, when VAM is not available, SLTs are worth the entire 50% of that quantitative score. A goal of the new evaluation system is to have a differentiated approach. And so LEADS does allow for differentiated observations. So Bulletin 130 provides these minimum requirements. So new teachers in their first 3 years of teaching, so in years 0, 1, and 2, they will receive 3 observations. For teachers within this 3 years of experience, with 3 years of experience and beyond, so they've already taught 3 years and or more, their first observation will be unannounced. And if that unannounced observation is below a 3.5, a second observation will be conducted, and that one will be announced. And if the average of those 2 is less than 2.5, then a third observation, which will be unannounced again, will be conducted. This differentiation is to allow administrators to focus attention on new teachers and those that are most in need of improvement, while ensuring that the effective teachers receive targeted feedback and continue focusing their efforts on student growth. Bulletin 130 does continue to allow systems to designate observers to assist with informing evaluation. Systems may wish to select experienced teachers who serves in roles such as instructional coaches or mentor or master teachers to assist with conducting these observations. These designated observers are also required to attend training and pass a certification assessment prior to observing. And remember, these observers conduct observations, which are part of the full observation, but the assigned evaluator will enter the observation ratings into the data system and will finalize the full observation. Now we'll have a preview into the actual process for observations. We follow the POP cycle. For an announced observation, you'll have a pre-conference where the teacher is asked to provide background information, and this actually is the beginning of the coaching process. With an unannounced observation, the evaluator won't have the opportunity for a pre-conference, but they will analyze the lesson plan to get information on lesson objectives, activities, and materials. After each classroom observation, the teacher being observed has the opportunity to reflect on the lesson and then receives written feedback from the individual evaluator in a post-conference. In the post-conference, the evaluator shares a reinforcement and a refinement area. All observations, announced and unannounced, do include this post-conference. The area of refinement will be reflected in the professional growth plan or the coaching plan. The Louisiana Educator Rubric will be used for all K-12 grade teachers, and there are 4 domains and 23 indicators. As we said, there are 4 domains. Here you can see, go ahead and click. Here you can see where the domain is located on the rubric. Right now you're seeing a sample. This particular domain is the instruction domain. There are also indicators. Here you can see a particular indicator that falls in the instructional domain, the standards and objective indicator. This rubric does consist of 12 indicators in the instruction domain, and each indicator is differentiated on 3 levels. Okay, as you can see here, if we click, the orange arrow now points to the descriptors. So we said we have our domains and our indicators. So we have our domain instruction and our indicator standards and objectives. And then we will have our descriptors to give further detail on those indicators. We also have performance levels. They are at levels 1, 3, and 5. However, it is important to note that performance can also be given at a level 2 or a level 4 based on a preponderance and quality evidence from the lesson. We also want to point out what each of these 3 performance levels mean. You can see that the orange arrow pointing to the exemplary area shows us the description of performance. And this gives you a little bit more information on that student-centered learning that needs to be looked at in each of the areas. Now we'll look at the weights. So we said we had 4 domains. Each of these domains is weighted differently. You can see here that instruction, of course, carries the most weight. And then we also have weights for design, for planning, environment, and professionalism. This rubric will account for 90% of the qualitative assessment score for observation, and the other remaining 10% is self-assessment. Now, because the qualitative assessment score is only worth 50% of the total, we divide those percentages by 2, and that's where we can see that observations becomes worth 45 of the total, and a self-assessment becomes 5 of the overall total. All right, now we'll look a little bit more at follow-up coaching and support, which is a very important new feature of our LEADS evaluation system. It does incorporate 6 steps. The model is considered a cycle. And so that's very important because we do want to ensure that the evaluation system is a process towards growth. It's not a one and done. It will continue to cycle. And so the PGP plan is revisited after each teacher observation, whether it be formal or informal. Important to note here, the coaching cycle begins by identifying a student need. The student need should connect to the teacher's refinement and goal and objective. And there's always a relationship between the teacher actions and the student behaviors. For this process, we'll have to think about how improvement in that refinement area is going to positively impact the students. This coaching cycle is adapted from Diane Sweeney and Leanna Harris's book, Student-Centered Coaching, The Moves. Bulletin 130 does support this process. First, it outlines the post-conference plan that is going to be given within 5 days following an observation. Educators will engage with their observer or evaluator in a post-conference, where the educator will then reflect on the lesson and the evaluator will share the feedback on a reinforcement and refinement area. Each observation, as we said, does result in a refinement area, which will then be reflected in that professional growth plan or coaching plan. These plans are individualized based on the refinement area. Highly reflective teachers might identify their own actions towards improvement during the post-conference. The number and types of actions are going to vary based on the teacher's need. The individual who supports the educator through follow-up coaching is not limited just to the person who observed the lesson. Responsibilities for coaching and supporting the teachers following that observation can be distributed among teacher leaders and other appropriate school leaders. It could be principals, assistant principals, deans, instructional coaches, mentors, or content leaders. And so we just do want to stress that each plan is going to be unique and different and based on what the teacher needs and the unique circumstances of the school personnel as well. A targeted informal observation is also going to be conducted at least 2 weeks, not more than 6 weeks, following a post-conference. Now, this coaching plan is a living document. It's going to be revisited after each observation. So it'll be revisited after that formal observation, and it'll be revisited after an informal observation. We also want to point out again that the educator tool is not required for early childhood teachers. The class observation tool will be used. Per Bulletin 130, early childhood is required to use the class tool to conduct observations for accountability. 2 observations are required for accountability. However, it's important to note for evaluation, the observation requirements outlined earlier do apply to early childhood teachers for evaluation. They do follow Bulletin 130 for all other components of evaluation. All right, now that we've gone through some of the overview for the Louisiana Educator Evaluation System, I'd like you to take a minute to think about how the Louisiana Educator Evaluation System will support this growth mindset. And if you want to take a moment, you can put that in the chat. Does anybody want to share how they think the Louisiana educator system will support a growth mindset? Thank you. Yes, it does take into account that everybody should be growing, teachers and students. And there's always room for improvement. That's right. Yes, we want to grow students by growing our teachers. Oh, and I like this one. The focus is on coaching. That's right. More than the number. Again, it's a process. We really do want to support our educators and improve practices. Yes, the coaching is going to give the opportunity for reflection. That's right. We are teaching teachers how to be empowered to do reflection and make change on their own. Awesome. All right, I'm going to now turn it over to Rebecca to review the Louisiana Counselor Evaluation System.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to give Lori a break for a second. As we talk through our Louisiana Counselor Evaluation System, we did hear, before I get into the slide, we did hear from our counselors quite a bit through the survey and through focus groups. And throughout our process. So the development of this really was hand in hand with our counselors and national experts on school counseling. So this system does include the use of a new rubric, the Louisiana Counselor rubric. This is still in process. Today we will share the educator and leader rubric. This one is a few weeks behind, but we will share this as soon as it is ready. But this includes an enhanced training and certification process for evaluators as well. Evidence collection for the counselors will be ongoing throughout the year. And there's opportunities for the counselors to go back and revisit goals and revisit action plans. they are provided the opportunity, like our leaders, to reflect in our teachers with the self-assessment portion of their evaluation. So just as a reminder, the blue represents that qualitative, that 50% assessment score, and the green represents the student growth or the qualitative score. Each are worth 50% of that overall score. So the first conference for counselors is going to be worth 15% of the overall rating, and the second is going to be worth 30%. Self-assessment is 5%, and then SLTs are 50% of their overall score. And counselors are going to review previous and current data and meet with their evaluators to set goals at the beginning of the year. And then during the middle of year conference, they're going to reflect on the progress of these goals and towards the goals. And their evaluators are going to provide coaching and feedback. This process is followed again by the end of year conference. And so just to reiterate that, go ahead, next slide. To show you in Bulletin 130. So this was approved as well, the counselor piece. So the artifacts and data are going to be collected throughout the year. This can be done through site visits, document sharing, communications. There's going to be that middle and end of year performance review, and then the self-assessment as well as part of their final scoring. So in this slide, I want to give you just a few seconds to read through this slide to look at, there's 5 domains and 13 indicators that are going to encompass the important work of our counselors, of what they should be allowed time to perform on a regular basis. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to kind of glance over this. So as superintendents and system leaders on this call, we want you to think about tasks as we're planning for this upcoming year. Think about the tasks that your counselors are involved in and tasks that they should be involved in according to this rubric. Like we said, we had focus groups with our counselors, and a lot of them stated, well, that's not what I'm doing. Thinking about state testing and other administrative duties, those are not reflected on this rubric. So this is part of that growth mindset change that we've been talking about, and how can we continue to think through and how do we elevate their role as counselors? What tasks and best practices are they currently doing and what they should be doing? And our counselors should be included on our leadership teams and in teacher collaborations as appropriate to their tasks. And those tasks should not be halted for state testing. So the domains of the counselor rubric are assigned weight. You can see here as a 25%, 20, or 15%. And so I'm going to hand it back over to Lori to talk about the leader evaluation system.
All right, now we'll take a deep dive into the leader system. Here you can see that the Louisiana Leader Evaluation System does include the Louisiana Leader Rubric, which will be shared at the end of our presentation. It does also include that enhanced training for evaluators and certification process. What is a little different is that evidence is now going to be ongoing, whereas previously we had an observation. Now it'll be a conference after evidence is collected throughout the school year. Opportunities to collect this data or site visits or through document sharing. And during these conferences, individuals will look at goals, they'll set action plans, and they'll reflect on these goals, which we'll look at in a bit. Leaders are provided the opportunity to self-assess just as the other educators. Here you can see that for principals, we're looking at the principal component weights, which are a little bit different because they have an extra component. The first conference is worth 12.5% of the overall rating. The second conference is worth 25% of the overall rating. and the principal survey accounts for 7.5% of the overall rating. Remember here, we're looking at all components for a total score. You can see that SLTs on our student growth or our quantitative side are worth 50%. Now, principals who have over 3 years of experience and obtain a 3.5 the previous year do waive one observation, and in that instance, the observation would be accounting for 37.5% of the full evaluation. Here you can see the difference between our principal and non-principal, because remember, the non-principal does not have that survey piece. And so their first conference rate is first conference is worth 15%. The second is worth 30. Self-assessment overall is worth 5, and the SLT again is still worth 50%. Okay, as we just kind of saw, there is a middle of the year conference and an end of the year conference that are weighted. And the evaluation process is the same for principals and non-principals. However, principals do include that principal survey that's completed by the teacher. And again, to allow more support for new principals or those at schools with lower proficiency, support for principals is differentiated. For principals with more than 3 years of experience and a 3.5 the previous year, the second conference or performance review may be waived, and they'll have one conference in the qualitative score. Here you can see for non-principals, it follows the same process. They have 2 conferences. The weights are just adjusted here because they do not have the principal survey, and they do still have that self-assessment piece. So leaders follow the same process outlined earlier for counselors. At the beginning of the year, they're going to review previous data. They're going to look at current data. They're going to set their goals. These goals can be connected to their SLTs. These goals could be their strategic plan. You know, they're going to discuss all of these things with their evaluator, and then they're going to begin collecting that data. During a middle of the year conference, the leaders are going to reflect on their progress towards those goals, and then the evaluators are going to provide coaching and feedback. The process is followed again at the end of the year. Here you can see that the leader rubric does consist of 6 domains and 21 indicators.
Ms. Pennison, before you go on with that, there was a question around the principal survey. Is that survey administered twice during the school year, or is that only on one occasion?
The principal survey is on one occasion. All right, so the 6 domains are weighted just as we saw for the educators or the counselors. The different domains can carry different weights. Here you see either 10, 15, or 20%. Okay, and now we just are going to go over a couple of things that are going to be additional features of our LEADS evaluation system. So there are going to be handbooks that are going to help evaluators. They have examples, explanations, and this handbook is really integral in helping to categorize evidence and assign scores. There will also be guidance documents used to support evaluating roles that might be spelled out and traditional, such as you may have teachers of ESL students or a special education teacher. And so we have guidance now to show you how to use the rubric on someone who might be performing a slightly different task, even master teachers or instructional coaches. So how we can use a rubric with an educator who doesn't have the exact duties of a typical teacher or a typical school leader. We do have rubrics that now have Louisiana verbiage, And we also have resources and a video library that will be in our professional learning platform. We'll be submitting or releasing different videos and things throughout the year. All right, now that we've looked at the leader evaluation system, how do you feel the leader evaluation system is also going to support that growth mindset? I'd like you to think for a minute and put in the chat. How does the leader evaluation system support a growth mindset? Yeah, always looking for ways to improve. And again, it speaks to the reflection. They're going to be able to self-assess. And they're going to talk through in those conferences how they're doing to meet their goals. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, who's going to talk about some things to help you prepare for the transition.
All right, and Lori, I'll send you to the chat. There's some questions in the chat if you wanted to start answering some of those. I started as well. And some of those questions we will be covering in this next section as we talk about transitioning. And this part is really important to me as a former system leader. That transition, that planning piece is so powerful as you begin a new initiative. And we learned some lessons as we went through the pilot that we're going to share with you. All right. So first, there's just some actions to consider, and we're going to talk through some of these in the following slides to ensure a smooth transition. So looking at who are your evaluators are, attending training, communication, getting your schedule together, norming, and then determining local policy decisions. Okay, so first, it's important to select who your evaluators or your designated observers are. So this piece did not change in policy. You can still designate other observers. And really thinking through who do you need to be assisting with observing and evaluating. So for example, a school with a large number of teachers who require 3. If you have a large school, you have a lot of new teachers in their first 3 years of experience, yet few school leaders there. It may be necessary to designate other observers on your campus, thinking through who are my mentor teachers, who are my content leaders, who can I use, and also thinking through who at the system level can come and assist me. And all of these people are going to have to go through the training and the assessment and be certified to do this. And thinking through, like if someone is going on leave, if someone's going on maternity leave or military leave, how can I ensure that I have others that are certified to observe on my campus? Systems may also want to review current evaluators of principals. So this was something in the chat. So previously, a lot of school systems may have had just the superintendent doing all the observations for their principals. So now as superintendents, you may want to think through who on my district ILT can go through the training and be observers of my principals, because we know we're going to have to go in and support them and have coaching and artifacts and things like that. So it is beneficial now to start thinking about those things as we get into the summer planning of who do you want to be those observers of your school principals. I had another question that talked about the assistant principals. They're observed by their principal. I just want to make sure that was clear. So also start thinking about this so that the training is still open. We do want to point out there was a link earlier on the slides of Bulletin 130 to see the changes. It did get approved where if your mentor teachers or anyone goes through, or anyone you want to be a mentor teacher comes through the training, they can use the training and passing their certification assessment to apply for the mentor credential. So if you're needing more mentors on your campus, this is a great opportunity to sign them up. We have August and September trainings that still have openings for those that are 9 and 10-month employees to be able to attend. So I encourage you to look at that to see, do I need more mentors on our school campuses? Okay. Communication with stakeholders. We found this a crucial element. We saw it many different ways throughout our pilot, but this we found was the key factor in transitioning to leads. And those that had internal documents, that had plans, they had a really smooth rollout in our pilot, rather than those that just told their people, hey, we're transitioning, this is coming. And so you may want to begin meeting with your system level leaders now to discuss roles and responsibilities of supporting the transition to the new leader and educator evaluation system, and determining expectations for your schools and your school leaders. It's going to be equally important to meet with the school leaders to communicate the excitement, build, you know, and build that growth mindset with them, because they're the ones, that are going to be going and supporting the instruction and talking with their teachers. Now, teachers and counselors are both going to be equally excited and anxious. That's what we're getting now. They're very excited, but they don't know it's coming. So for the smooth transition, leaders are going to want to go and meet over the changes in processes and components. We're going to have some resources available in our professional learning platform where teachers and counselors can go and review. We're also going to provide some turnkey materials. So on those back to school days in August, where you have 3-4 days, we're going to be providing some turnkey PowerPoint presentations so that the school leaders can walk their teachers through what's coming up. Those will be available this summer, and we'll get those to you. We'll put it in all of our communication channels. Also, a superintendent video message could also be just as powerful. We had one of our superintendents in our pilot do this, and he recorded himself on his phone at his desk, and posted it to all their channels to really help frame that transition in a positive way. And he really wanted to show that because now they added multiple observers. They had district people coming in and helping. And he wanted to frame it as like, I got you, rather than like, I got you. So that's also another, I did ask him if we could share it. So if anyone is available, if anybody wants it, just let me know and I can show it to you. All right. So we found this to be the most critical piece in our planning with our pilot system. So a really effective observation schedule. We had our pilots do it many different ways. Some of them had an Excel sheet with their schools tabbed at the bottom. Some had one Excel sheet for each school, all in a folder, but really thinking through the schedules and knowing, okay, I know for my 0 to 3 year teachers, I need 3 observation cycles. You can still leave windows open depending on those other teachers, but then also labeling which ones are announced and unannounced. As you saw in policy, those that have more than 3 years of experience, that first one has to be unannounced. Putting who is doing the observation there, defining the windows. You can do this as a district too and have a district template of this is what we expect, so that then now your schools can come in and start planning their schedules, and also ensuring that post-conference has to happen within 5 days. So making sure everything is laid out to create that effective schedule. Other items to consider that we saw from our pilot was linking to the master schedule, listing subjects, times, resources, adding names of shadow observers. We had some systems that had 2 or 3 people in there as shadows, and then also local policy so that everyone is clear on what is expected. Another piece that we find that is critical to planning this summer is the professionalism domain. So once we share the rubric soon, you're going to see the professionalism listed as a domain. The reason that this is now a domain is we heard in a survey from school leaders and system leaders, we're seeing a lot of things throughout the year, and addressing it at the end of the year is not the right time. We need to address it throughout the year. So having this as a domain allows for those conversations on professionalism to happen throughout the whole year. So, but as a system, you should define what each of these pieces look and sound like locally. So some systems that are currently using NIET have that. They have an internal document where they say, what does this specific piece to educator adheres to system and school policy mean? And they define it out. So start digging through that as a system level ILT to think, how can we come up with what this looks and sounds like, so that when you go and present it to your staff, it's very, very clear.
Ms. Stevenson, if you don't mind, we are answering some of the questions in the chat, but Serena White, if you don't mind coming off of mute and perhaps explaining your question so that we can provide a quality answer.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I apologize for not being clear. I'm just, we begin now to schedule back to school PD. And so I just need to know an approximate time that we need to block off for sharing this leads rubric with teachers. I know that you said that y'all would, that you would have
The turnkey.
the turnkey presentations available for us. I just need to know an approximate amount of time to block.
I don't have the exact time of that. We're still working. Nicole, do you know approximately like a 90-minute, 2-hour?
I was just checking that. I believe it's 90 minutes.
Okay.
It's 60 or 90 minutes. I'm going to double check right now and I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you who are moving to this rubric for the first time, obviously providing support and trainings throughout the year is going to be critical. And so you should think long range. What pieces of the rubric are going to be the most valuable? Which pieces do you want to begin to roll out and when? And systems have the autonomy to make those decisions. But we will provide, as we mentioned, the turnkey sort of solution. And we're also working to sort of strategically place webinars throughout the year that will include LDOE as well as NIET representatives to provide that ongoing support to system leads and perhaps educators as we're rolling out. And then we're also in the process of developing some on-site regional support as we work through the year.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so also thinking through your planning and your summer work as you're really meeting and talking through this with your system level, when creating these evaluation schedules and planning out professional learning for the year, like you all were just saying, it's important to consider some of these pieces and practices to improve that inter-rater reliability in relation to scoring in the rubrics. So some practices may include, here's just some examples of norming on indicators, which can be done through your ILT. So you can have that planned out of when you're going to do that. Having a close examination on the rubric indicators using the handbook, the PL platform, videos, resources. Learning walks can be used for system leaders, where you bring in your school leaders for the purpose of taking the learning walks and collecting evidence to really norm there. Only looking at 1 to 3 indicators at a time, not the whole piece. Then having the group debrief of the learning walks, discussing the evidence, and determining appropriate feedback that the principal can provide for the teacher. This can be a similar process done at the school level as well. Shadow scoring, is when observers and evaluators pair for an observation, then categorize the evidence and assign individual ratings. And then lastly, they come back together on a consensus for that lesson and observation. So these are both, the learning walks and shadow scoring are both opportunities to review and categorize evidence. Another way to build reliability in evidence collection is to analyze the quality of the evidence that the observers and evaluators are capturing. This can also be strengthened by analyzing the quality and provided in the post-conference plans. And so on the next slide, this is something that we really heard from one of our pilot systems that they talked through. As they went through the pilot with us, as they planned, capturing high quality evidence or evidence selection and categorizing are both good places for systems to begin focusing in order to improve the process and plan for the transition. So thinking through what are some of the pieces of evidence that we are collecting. So during observations, evaluators collect evidence by scripting word for word of everything that's said and done during the lesson, and using high quality evidence allows for more accurate scoring and helps remove that evaluator bias regardless of the observation tool being used. So you can see here on the left side for educators, here's just some high quality evidence types that have been identified. And then for leaders and counselors, like we had mentioned on some of the previous slide, this evidence collection is ongoing and it's usually in a shared drive where you're uploading, some teacher-led meeting agendas, newsletters, communication to parents. It could be your literacy plan. It could be many different things that you are all going to decide beforehand of what this looks like. Now, after you go through the training this summer, you're probably going to have more conversations around this. But this is as you I'll put the PowerPoint again in the chat as you keep this and go through this. This is a really good starting point for systems to decide how are we going to do this and how will we collect it. And so thinking through policy considerations, I know a lot of times you email the inbox and we reply back, that's a local policy decision, because Bulletin 130 does state that systems are required to develop plans for the evaluation of personnel. So this includes job descriptions, the components of teacher and leader evaluation, and a process for handling grievances and conflict. So during the summer, this is a really good place to start. So if you need to go to your board and bring forth a new policy for evaluation as you think through this. A lot of times we get job descriptions, Lori mentioned this earlier, and we say this person has to be evaluated. That's because of the job description. If you need to go back and revisit job descriptions, this is a good starting point of, hey, this is a refresh. This is a good time for, we looked at some job descriptions yesterday that looked 10 to 15 years old. So this is, that opportunity to really hone in on that. Think through your grievance process. Also, evaluation payout is a local policy decision. We've been asked, look, we were a TAP district, we did TAP payout. That is your local decision. You can decide performance-based pay however you want to decide performance-based pay. That's something to start discussing now. I'm thinking if you want to revisit and decide how you do this. But calculations are a local decision. All right. So we want you to take the next, we have 2 minutes, but we'll just give you a few silent seconds to think through what are the next steps, or what is the first thing as you prepare for the transition to leads. So what is one thing that you're thinking through? Maybe what's one thing you just wrote on a sticky note that you're like, I need to do this, or one thing you wrote on your computer or on your tablet that is the likely next step in the months to come. So go ahead and take a second to think. And if we could have a few people share that in the chat, I think that would be helpful for the group.
I see that someone put that they're going to attend the training, and I do want to point out, we do encourage system leaders, even if you are not an evaluator, to attend so that you can support your principals and your teachers and really understand the process as we transition. So that's great. That's a great first step.
Yeah, and I love how Rebecca Freeland said updating job descriptions for everyone. And then, you know, that is something that we've heard from others as well as we've been communicating. Yeah. And, you know, even someone that you may think you might want to use as an observer, send them through the training this summer. Just to have that extra set of hands if needed. Identify those teachers now that could be trained and a good observer for your school system. Making sure all are informed, yes. Okay, so we had a question about Bulletin 130 allows for LEAs to submit a proposed alternate observation tool. Yes, this is only for the rubric. The rubric is the only thing that you can submit that waiver for. Everything else, you know, in policy has to be followed. Now for next year, you have to use what you're currently using this year. That's what policy states. We will not be accepting new waivers for next year for the rubric. You will have to use what you're currently using this year if you are not transitioning.
And then following that, you would need to apply every year.
Yes,
if you
every
wanna
single
use
year.
an alternate rubric. Again, just a rubric. Everything else still applies.
Yes, I love this. The communication. I do have to share, you know, seeing the difference in the pilot of those that were communicated with prior to those that were told to come to the training was vastly different. So I do think that that communication and having that growth mindset is really, really important. All right, thank you all for sharing. We know that the next steps, you know, I love planning, and so I think that it's fun. But it is very important as you get into the summer before school starts. And, you know, as we get more information, we're going to release it to you all. And we look forward to supporting you with it too. Please reach out to us if you have questions, if you want us to look at your schedule, if you want to talk through anything. We're here to support. You can email leads@la.gov and we will help you with any of these next steps. So speaking of further next steps, I'm going to pass it back to Lori to talk about the new data system that is rolling out soon.
Ah, how exciting, but I also understand the fear behind something new. But I am excited. I've been able to preview some pieces, and we're working to ensure that it has enhancements that are much needed. So we'll talk a little bit about this. All right, so the new data system that will be replacing CIS is going to be called LES, Louisiana Evaluation System. Make it nice and simple. Louisiana Evaluation System. What is more complicated is that it is a piece of a larger system called the Louisiana Educator Portal. And so this larger system will have different processes, including certification and others, but we are a piece of that larger system. And so this data system is a comprehensive data system. It's going to hold all evaluation data as CIS currently does. It's going to hold the observation data, the SLTs. You'll also enter your informal observation dates in here. The professional growth plan will be in here. What's new and exciting is that the roster is going to pre-populate from EdLink. And so our CIS administrators know that currently they have to go in and create rosters and transfer individuals. And this process should be much simpler because it will be tied to EdLink, and following a refresh, it should update wherever, if somebody moves mid-year, it should update. It'll also transfer their data with them. But the system level contact who currently manages CIS will still have some similar tasks, such as assigning evaluators or unlocking a closed evaluation. So they will perform some task, but it should be streamlined. Evaluators are going to go in, they're going to enter those observation scores. The evaluatee is going to enter their self-assessment. They'll both enter information on the coaching plan that'll be revisited throughout the year. And the system's also going to have built-in reminders to remind you to complete different tasks in the system. But because this system is now going to be, really throughout the year, hands-on, it is not going to allow for a spreadsheet upload. So that function will be going away. All data will be entered directly in the system. The observer is going to directly go enter the scores themselves. It will not be handed over and uploaded through a spreadsheet. We will have webinars coming that will provide overviews of the system, demonstrations. We'll have published videos and one-pager guides. All of this will be coming. So we promise to support you throughout this process. We'll have office hours. You can email for support. We can get on a call. But we're excited about this new system. And so hopefully you will be able to see the difference as well, because we know that CIS is ancient and it's time for an upgrade. Now, as I did mention, if you currently use the spreadsheet upload method, you're going to need to do those spreadsheet uploads prior to August, because once we flip to the new system, spreadsheets are no longer available. So any data not entered prior to August, if you do the spreadsheet, you would then at that point need to go in and enter it manually. So there will still be a way to close it out if the spreadsheet's not done prior to August. But if you're wanting to use that for the 23-24 school year, observation and SLT data would need to be uploaded prior to August. I see a question about VAM here. VAM is not going to be a problem. VAM does not go on that spreadsheet. VAM is going to be entered directly into the system. And I know that currently there were issues with VAM coding and final scores. That's no longer going to be a problem. It's going to automatically recalculate for those who have VAM, and it will allow the finalization for those who do not have VAM. So if you do a spreadsheet upload and you want to do it, please get it in before August, but no worries. If you don't get it in, then you will be able to manually enter those observation and SLT scores. Again, if you are unable to do it prior to August, you will be able to go in and manually enter those scores, or the evaluators will. All right. In closing, I do want to point out, as we mentioned, we are going to have monthly calls throughout the year that'll be supportive. They'll be focused on different topics that we see are needed for support to dig deeper into the evaluation system, into the rubric. These calls will be conducted by both NIT and LDOE. We're also going to have office hours for technical support and assistance, and then we are working out some on-site visits. I see someone asking about the platform. That is, the platform will also have resources. It's called the Professional Learning Platform. You might also hear the name Canopy. Canopy is the platform that houses our professional learning platform, and that is where the rubric the certification assessment is going to be taken, and we'll also have resources in there. Resources for teachers, resources for evaluators to dig deeper, and other materials as well. We do want to point out that during the 24-25 school year, the work is going to continue. We're going to continue to refine our evaluation resources. SLT guidance is going to be enhanced with more examples, additional classroom examples. Currently we have no examples for teachers, such as foreign language teachers, or home ec teachers, teachers that don't teach the traditional core subject areas. We're going to put more samples out for them to use. And there'll be more resources for the counselors. A counselor handbook will be developed. And so we'll continue to collect data, feedback, and refine all materials during this 24-25 school year prior to our full implementation. Now I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca for our launch. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, so we're going to share a video from Claudia Haynes in Claiborne Parish for our launch today. Claudia and Claiborne were part of our pilot. And so we'd like to share this before we leave you for today.
As a district leader, it can be scary. Change is always scary. And I think sometimes district leaders feel that they don't have the full knowledge or capacity around instructional changes, depending on which role they have within a district. Depending on how a district approaches it, new learning can start small. But you're going to have the biggest impact if you're willing to take the step and to make the change.
So thinking through what Claudia just shared and moving to our next slide about growth mindset, how do you feel the system as a whole supports this growth mindset? And I want to come back to that quote, the more reflective we are, the more effective we are. Think for a minute and put, if we could have a few people respond in the chat. Yeah, I see, Angie, that the cyclical model allows for constant reflection, which is aligned to the growth mindset. Yeah, we've heard that a lot. We've heard, policy now states that, Lori mentioned earlier, after the formal observation comes an informal, focused on that refinement area, which really allows for that follow-up and that cycle to really, embrace that feedback. Anyone else thinking through the system as a whole?
Rebecca, I think at this point, they just want to get the rubric.
I think so too. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all. Oh, I like how Nikki, you said it's I got you instead of gotcha. Yes. And that's what that superintendent's message was. And Carolyn, yes, it's more about growth and development and not so much about subjectivity and that judgment and that bias. I really like how you pointed that out. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Joffrion, and as he is speaking to you, I'm going to put the rubrics. They will be available on the website. We're just waiting for comms to post them. They just weren't available as of this webinar. So if you go to our Compass library, we are redeveloping the the library and the website soon, but we have a section for leads right now. They will be available in that section, but moving forward, but for now, I'm going to post the PDFs in the chat for you.
So just to wrap up, while Rebecca is posting those rubrics in the chat for you, just our sincere appreciation to our 17 pilot LEAs and charter organizations. The feedback that we received during the year-long process was extremely valuable. And I think that you can see that we came up with not only outstanding research-based, valid and reliable rubrics that reflect the spice and flair of Louisiana, but we came up with a system that is differentiated and allows you to provide the necessary support for the educators who need it the most. Because ultimately, we want the evaluation system to help to improve student achievement across the state. And the best way to do that is to provide support and coaching to our teachers who are on the front lines, providing the best that they've got each and every day for our students. Thank you all for your participation. We do have our frequently asked questions document located, embedded in this deck that you all have received via chat, so you will have access to that. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us via leads@la.gov with any questions, because this will help us to continue to flesh out this process. Thank you all so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day.